Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and today I have my December wrap-up. The first book that I read in December was The Children of the Lamp, the Akhenaten Adventure by P.B. Kerr. This book is my third reread. I first purchased this book way back in 2004, when I was either 11 or 12 years old. And yeah, basically, children's books aren't always necessarily for children. Sometimes adults can read them as well. And this time, this adult was rereading a series he'd enjoyed as a child in order to try and figure out how he wants to best work his own children's book when he eventually gets around to writing it. Now that I have talked about myself in the third person for the 50,000th time in a long time, we're going to talk about The Children of the Lamp. This book follows twins, John and Philippa, as they discover that they are gin. And I don't mean the nice kind that you drink with tonic. That joke is made in here. No, these are completely, well and truly, genie. And as a child, this book was something I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed this series because I'd always been a fan of Aladdin and enjoyed adaptations of the Arabian Nights that I'd seen on the television, and I thought we were on for a win-win situation here. As a child, yeah, I enjoyed it. As an adult, at the age of 25, I had the great realisation that this book could be seen as being mildly racist, which is never something you want from a book. Basically, there's a character in here, and his name's Nimrod. He is the children's uncle, he is this Dumbledore-like character, he smokes, he drinks tea. Smoking's glorified a bit, but it's okay because these are jinn, and it's actually the humans' fault. But jinn smoke because they like fire. Okay, I can kind of get behind that. But, you know, could they not just have had a coal fire? I don't know. Let's just not even get into that now. Let's get into the racism. Basically, Nimrod hates everybody. And I feel like this was the writer's way of saying, do you know what? I might have been a bit racist towards the people in Cairo whose country this actually is when I was talking about them in certain ways that may have been a bit belittling and derogatory. And, you know, the fact that these are white people coming into our country when it could have easily been about the people of our country, then, you know, I feel like he was saying he hates everybody, so it's okay. No, it's never okay, basically. And there is the white saviour trope that I have only become more knowledgeable of as I've grown older, so as a child I did not notice this, and I will forgive 12-year-old Charlie. But basically, Nimrod, John and Philippa are going to discover something and reset the luck in this world because the luck's all out of sync, and if bad luck overtakes good luck then the world will just be screwed basically because there's all these different tribes of jinn and some are bad and some are good. Fine, that's fine, but basically they're white and they're going to Cairo and they are saving people who could have probably saved themselves. I know this isn't necessarily their story. I know P.B. Kerr was probably writing something a bit more magical, used the Arabian Nights because witches and wizards at this time had kind of been overtaken by J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. Harry Potter was still being published when this book came out. And, it, you know, I liked magic and it was something that I wanted to read at the time. But this time around, I couldn't help but notice that it was also a bit poorly written, in the fact that sometimes P.B. Kerr would be trying to have this almost omniscient narrator style common with like Peter Pan and the classic books that we have seen in the canon of children's literature, such as the Narnia books or Alice in Wonderland. And then he'd switch into his very dry, adult writing voice that he has used in some of the books that he's written for older people about the spies and things. And the two didn't really mesh together well. And then you get, it's very fast read if you can be bothered to pick the book up, which, you know, sometimes I couldn't. And then I got to the end of this book, and there's a build-up to Akhenaten, the old dead pharaoh, appearing, but he's barely seen in the book. He disappears at one point, so this really strong character, you never actually get to see it all, and the climax is really dull and it's more of an anti-climax really. And then I don't know whether P.B. Kerr realised that he was being a bit white a bit white saviour, but he did end up turning it round in the end and making it be like, okay guys, we got this, you didn't really need to be here, which kind of gave the sense of, was this book at all necessary? Did we really need any of these characters? Would the villains have figured it out for themselves? Because I feel like once the villains have their end, there's then all this pointless stuff that happens in London, and then it goes to Antarctica at some point. And yeah, to me it felt a lot like I felt like about the final 4 books in the series. So I am going to reread it because I remember that the second book was my favourite and I want to see whether I still enjoy that book. But there's every chance that I'm going to dislike it as much as I like this one. And if you actually were looking for something that did have a diverse cast and talk about more diverse myths, then I would recommend the Ash Mystery series by Sar Watchadder, or even Rick Riordan's Kane Chronicles, because I feel like both of them dealt with myth and legend a lot better for middle grade readers. Next, I read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. There isn't much I need to say about this plot because it is quite well known, and I have watched 3 Dickens Christmas Carol adaptations this month. We follow the character of Ebenezer Scrooge. He's a miser. He hates the world, he hates Christmas, he likes money, and some ghosts are coming to him to get him to mend his ways. This time, I actually felt for Scrooge. This time, being the age that I am, I didn't necessarily want him to stop being mean because some of the things he was saying I was finding myself agreeing with. And I don't know whether it's just because I finally transformed into the grumpy old man that my mother always said I was, but I did find myself sympathising and empathising with Scrooge's plight. And also, not gonna lie, if 4 ghosts did visit me in one night, I'm pretty sure I would be changing my ways. Anyway, this is the classic Christmas story, and what I like about this book that I didn't notice until I was rereading this for the Cozy Reading Night was that this employs all of the classic facets that we see associated with Christmas. We do have the somewhat Christian take with some of the things that Scrooge mentions. We do have religion sometimes mentioned in here. The ghosts are very, you know, they're kind of inbuilt within our folklore, and they had to be in here really, didn't they? Because ghosts in the dark, in the winter, is just, they're all associated with one another, and using them in this fashion was a brilliant thing to do in my opinion, because these are ghosts that are able to they're able to take Scrooge through time, and Dickens employs them so that we're able to go with Scrooge on his journey, and they're able to tell his life story, but we don't need to know the whole story. We only need to know certain things to show us how Scrooge might have changed and how he will change because of what he is seeing. I also found myself being reminded somewhat of the Weasleys with the Cratchit family, and it was just the fact that they had a load of children, and they didn't have a lot of money. They're close to the poverty line, but there is still something very familiar to them, and there is something where familial, that's the word I'm looking for. They are all this big unit that are full of love for one another. Tiny Tim is representative of the children of the time as much as want and ignorance are. It's a Christmas classic. I know why it's a Christmas classic. I've read this book every Christmas for the last few years now, and I have never not enjoyed it. It's my favourite Christmas story. I have only watched Scrooge Christmas films this Christmas because it is the story that I enjoy the most. I then read A Snow Garden and Other Stories by Rachel Joyce, which is a collection of Christmas stories that are all connected in some way, and is bloody brilliant. Honestly, Rachel Joyce has just become one of my favourite writers this year. I have now read 3 of her books, and everyone has basically been great. Every one of Rachel Joyce's books has been brilliant. She has a great ear for dialogue, and because she has worked on radio plays in the past, she is able to capture prose in such a way that reading it is brilliant because it makes me appreciate her craft even more. But you can see how she knows the sound and cadences of the sentence can be used to pull an emotional response from the reader. That isn't me saying that any of this was forced. This was all brilliant, and it was a great Christmas book for me to read. I especially enjoyed one of the stories where I hadn't even realised I was getting a modern day nativity retelling until I was in the middle and I was seeing these characters' names, and I was like, oh yeah, and I really enjoyed that then, because at first I'd thoroughly enjoyed the first story, and I thoroughly enjoyed the motifs of these other characters, of the girl in the red coat. And I came to this story, I was like, oh, I'm not enjoying this one. And then then I realised what she was doing, and it was this, like, pulling back of me, and I was like, oh, this is great. And I ended up really enjoying every story within here. and I think that maybe, possibly, hopefully, I might reread this at Christmas in the future, because it's just brilliant. Joyce is able to tackle emotion incredibly well, and she knows how to create characters, and there is such a big cast in here. And also I liked the little cameo from Maureen. Next, I read Christmas Days by Jeanette Winterson. This is 12 stories and 12 feasts for 12 days. I got this book because of Lauren, over at Lauren and the Books, whose channel I have really grown to enjoy over the last year, and I thoroughly adored her Vlogmas videos, and seeing that she was reading these books, I was like, yes, I need to read these books. And so I will say about this book that whilst I did enjoy the stories, I preferred the feasts portion. This isn't a weight thing, this is because you got more of an insight into Jeanette Winterson, the writer, and who she is, and I really enjoyed seeing her talk about herself and her Christmas traditions. The stories in here do have some of the classic themes of like ghost stories, but there are also some more stories that would be suited to children. You have the nativity story retold from a different perspective, and all round it is a great Christmas read that I will be looking forward to rereading in future at Christmas time, and eventually maybe I'll accumulate all of these Christmas books and have nothing else to read during December. And finally, the last book of 2017, the last book that I read of the year, is Mr. Dickens and His Carol by Samantha Silver. Once again, another recommendation from Lauren over at Lauren and the Books. This book talks about Charles Dickens as he is writing A Christmas Carol, and I thought it would be brilliant considering it is one of my favourite writers writing one of my favourite books, and whilst I enjoyed this book for the most part, it wasn't necessarily extremely mind-blowing. It's a book that I'd maybe like to go and reread at Christmas time. I do like the hints towards Dickens and his characters, and seeing Dickens portray his own sort of Christmas Carol, really. I was discussing this book with my volunteer. I was talking about how grumpy and grouchy Dickens is within this book, and I was told that apparently that's how he is, so I was quite glad to hear about that. If you don't know a lot about Dickens, then this will teach you some things about Dickens that you maybe didn't know before. If you have read Dickens in the past and you know more about his life, then you will be impressed by Samantha Silver's inclusion of them, with inclusion of different stories he has told and different characters within this book that maybe went on to inspire other books of his. There are some humorous hints in here to like Bleak House and other things that I did enjoy reading. It's a book that I liked. There was nothing wrong within the book itself, and I did enjoy it for the most part and would recommend it as a Christmas read, but it didn't leave me feeling as joyous as A Christmas Carol. I think maybe the best thing going for this book is its end pages. There you go. Them's the books. It has been a strange month, filled with overtime. Well, I recorded reading vlogs for 2 weeks, but you will never see the second week because it was just completely awful. And I did a lot of Vlogmas videos. If you were here for them, I am extremely grateful and thank you for sitting through them. If you have sat through any of my videos this year, then once again, thank you, you're brilliant, and I'll see you in 2018. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these books, please feel free to discuss them in the comments. And until next time, that is all.